Hello, everybody. This is Vinya Vaitla. I would like to talk about Mendelian inheritance, which is a part of your chapter 9, that is heredity and evolution. Let me tell you, the fundamental property of all the living organisms is to reproduce. We all carry the genetic information in us, which is given to us by our parents. Now, how is this information replicated and transmitted to us? This question remains the major and central question to the entire biology. Mendelian inheritance addresses this question. Now, to know about this mode of inheritance, we need to first get introduced to heredity. What is heredity? Heredity is the generation of individuals with similar design. That is nothing but the passage or the transmission of the characters or the physical features from the parents to their progeny. For example, you and your mom share the same eye color. You and your dad share the same height. You and your grandfather might share the same left handedness. This process of movement of these physical characters is nothing but heredity. Heredity in Latin Heredity is a Latin term and it means inheritance in English. Heredity is observed in all the sexually reproducing organisms like human beings, animals, birds, and plants too. Now, let's go and meet Mendel. Who is this man? Gregor Mendel. He was an Austrian monk and is termed as the father of genetics. He was this man who was very much amazed to know about this particular movement of characters from grandparents to grandchildren, parents to children. He wanted to study about this mechanism, so he experimented on various number of plants like the model system which he used was garden pea plants which are commonly found. He experimented on about 10,000 garden pea plants and he observed the subsequent generations of them and obtained various inferences. His inferences laid the foundation to the genetics, which is evolved as a branch now. He has done his work about 2 centuries ago in 1865 when there was no concept of gene or genetics or chromosome known to him. He that is why termed as the father of genetics. Now, what is genetics? Genetics is this branch of biology which deals with the study of the path and mechanism of the inheritance. Like various other scientists, his work was neglected when he was alive. After his death, Hugo de Vries, Karl Correns, and Schermak in 1900 rediscovered the Mendelian principles, and that's how we now know all of them. And we laid the foundation of our modern genetics too on his basis of discoveries. Now, coming to his experiments, we should basically know about the technical terms which he used in the experiment. So let's get familiarized with them. First one is the character. What is a character? Character is defined as any observable feature, that is, the color of your eyeball or the color of the flower of a plant, your height or it might be the height of a plant, your shape of earlobe or it could be the shape of the seed in a plant. Here you can observe the character is the color of the flower. Here the character is the height of the plant. Now I require your attention here to know about traits. What are traits? Traits are the variations of the character. Here, color being the character, the presence of red, pink, orange, and yellow are the traits of the character color. Here, the presence of tall plant and the presence of short plants are the traits of the character height. Now, such seven characters were selected by Mendel in pea plants for his experimental study. He selected flower color, plant height, seed shape, pod color, pod shape, and the position of the flower. Now, each character has shown two traits where you can observe purple color and white color flowers are the traits of the character color of the flower. Being tall or being short are the traits of the character plant height. Being in yellow color or being in green color are the traits of the character seed color. Likewise, and so on. Now let's get to know other terms. The next term would be factor. Mendel has assumed that there were some particles which determined the character, and he termed those particles as factors. Say, for example, if you have a brown colored eye, that means you are carrying a particle or a factor in you which would determine your eye color to be in brown color but not in any other color. Or, for example, say if plant has a red colored flower, that means that plant has a factor, say capital R, which would give the flower its red color. And now, the other technical terms being parent generation, that is F naught or P, first filial generation, that is F1, second filial generation, that is F2. Now, how shall we imply this? Let's consider your grandparents being the parental generation, your parents, your mom and dad being the F1 generation, and you being the second filial generation, that is the F2 generation. This would make the concept clear to you. Now, let's get into his experiment. Mendel has taken one tall plant and one short plant. He has performed a cross pollination between both of these. He expected that there would be a mixture of characters, that is tall and short, and he expected all medium height plants would be yielded. But to his surprise, he observed all the tall plants in the F1 generation. Now he inferred that there were no short plants, there were no medium height plants. So he thought that the parental short plant was absent in this generation, but it might reappear in the subsequent generation. So to test this, he performed a self pollination in the F1 generation. This gave him three tall plants and one short plant. That is, three-fourth of the F2 generation were tall and one-fourth of the F2 generation were short. Now, this gave him the inference that short character is dominated by the tall character in the F1 generation. And also, in the F2 generation, the ratio of tall plants to short plants remained 3 is to 1. Now, let's get into his justification of the results. Let's assume this is the male plant and this is the female plant. Mendel assumed that there were particles which he called as factors that gave the plant that particular character. For example, he has considered this capital T was present in the tall plant which made it tall, and there was this small t present in this short plant which made it to be short. Now, when there was a cross pollination here, we have to understand which T got into the next generation, either the capital T or the small t. As the F1 generation has all tall plants, Mendel assumed that only the capital T is obtained in the F1 generation. Now, after the self pollination of F1 generation, he got F2 generation with three tall plants and one short plant. But these all capital T's which got into the next generation did not justify the presence of this short plant. Now he has to change his hypothesis and think something other. So now he thought it in this way. Now he assumed that there were two copies of the factor, that is two copies of capital T instead of a single one. Two copies of short t, small t instead of the single small t. That means these two copies gave the plant its tallness, and these two small t's made this plant short. Now, when there was a cross occurring here, each of the male and the female parent gave single capital T and single small t from them to the progeny. So, this yielded all the tall plants with the combination of capital T and small t. Now, we will have the doubt that why is small t not showing its effect? That means there were no short plants seen, but all were tall. That means that the single capital T was so powerful to express even when it is present in a singular form, which explains capital T was dominant over small t. So, in the subsequent generation, when this was self pollinated, they have got this combination, that is capital T and capital T giving a pure tall plant, small t and small t giving a pure short plant. Now, these two were hybrids, as single capital T would give a tall plant, presence of capital T and small t gave both the tall plants in the F2 generation. Now, let's make it more simple. This way of understanding will make you clear about the concept of Mendelian laws. Consider capital T and capital T is the male parent, small t and small t is the female parent. Both the parents gave 1 t from each of them to the F1 progeny. So this formed capital T and small t tall plant. Now this was self pollinated. This self pollination, let us see it here. This is the female side of the plant, this is the male side of the plant. Now, the combination goes like this: capital T and capital T giving a pure tall plant, small t and small t giving a pure short plant. Capital T and small t here, and a small t and the capital T giving hybrid combination of the factors, but the presence of the capital T making it a tall plant. So this can be concluded that There were three tall plants and one short plant according to the physical appearance. And now the ratio of the factors was 1 pure tall is to 2 hybrid talls is to 1 pure short. Now, let's summarize this presentation. Mendel discovered the fundamental laws of inheritance. He understood that these factors are the particles which we call it as genes now. They come in pairs and are inherited to the progeny as distinct units, that too one from each parent. He also tracked the segregation of the parental genes and their appearance in the offspring. He also identified which factor yielded a dominant trait and which factor yielded the recessive trait. With the recognition of mathematical patterns of inheritance, from one generation to the subsequent one, Mendel was able to formulate his laws of segregation, law of independent assortment, and the law of dominance. So, this concludes the presentation, Mendelian inheritance, and now we can understand that any mode of inheritance which follows these three laws is defined as Mendelian inheritance. Thank you.